When Kate bought a day with GBR with Major Richard Waygood MBE, Eventing World Performance Manager, to raise funds for Tokyo, what an opportunity this was for From the Horse Box.
We headed to Barbury Castle near Marlborough to go behind the scenes of Eventing Team GB. It's the most incredible viewing course on the Downs. We went backstage with Dickie and his team and saw firsthand where the money goes.
Leading from behind, never being allowed to say you've made it, even after over 40 Olympic medals, train hard, fight easy, confidence-giving and risk-taking, all things we learned from Dickie in an inspiring day.
Dickie, tell us, so you joined the army as a private in 1979.
Yeah, I joined the army in 1979 and I didn't really have a clue what I was going to join. So I arrived at the recruiting office with a good friend of mine who always knew that he wanted to join the Cavalry, he wanted to join the lifeguards. And on my recruiting sort of paper, I put down that I liked horses and dogs. And the main reason for that was my father was a gamekeeper, so we had lots of dogs. And secondly, my father loved horses. So I put that down, and then the next minute I found myself joining the lifeguards with my friend from school. And it was his dream always to join. Well, he stayed for 3 years, and 30 years later I was still there. So that's really how it all came about. I first went to the Guards Depot. The Guards Depot was the home of bullshit in those days, and I was sort of talking about it now as a working class finishing school. It was there to sort of knock the rough edges off. And then in the end of 1979, early 80s, I arrived at Knightsbridge. And Knightsbridge, for those who know it, Knightsbridge barracks, it was rebuilt in 1969 by Basil Spence. But yeah, they say it was the most beautiful barracks in the country, and the soldiers lived above the horses in those days, but they knocked it down. Basil Spence rebuilt, and it was this red brick monstrosity. However, when you walked into those barracks and you could hear the horses' hooves, 200 of them on the square at one time, the jingle of the eglets on the cuirasses, the swords jingling, and the trumpet then suddenly playing. It still does it now as we're talking. It makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up.
So that was exciting, and you realise that would be exciting enough for you?
Well, it took me back to a Victorian era, really. You're looking at a new build, but yet history that has gone on for 350 years within those walls is still carrying on today. So it was a very exciting place to be at that time.
So whilst you were in the army, in your early stages, you were also competing. Tell us about your rides at Burley in badminton.
So I had, the sort of story with the competitions, I arrived at Knightsbridge and I knew pretty quickly while I was in riding school that what I actually wanted to do, I wanted to become a riding instructor. Bear in mind in those days, and I'll give you a little story, I can remember being the troopers and the officers all did the same riding course, and I can remember going around a riding school, and there was a captain who was a lord in the ride with us, and the young instructor one day said to him, he said, Sir, he said, look at the state of you. What do you think Her Majesty would say if you were seen riding down the Mall like that? And the captain, the lord, looked down at the young corporal, and he said, Her Majesty would probably say, good morning, Morris. And as it happened, the Queen Mother was his godmother. So you can imagine me being a hedgekicker from the West Country and not really ever experiencing anything like this before. You thought, God, where am I? But I wanted to be a riding instructor. Once I became a riding instructor, I then learned about eventing, because on our military equitation course, which was up at Melton Mowbray, we were taught the three elements, the dressage, show jumping across country, and in those days especially eventing was still quite high up in the military as a sport, bearing in mind that if you look back at eventing history, it was an army sport, and it was designed to see that the horses had obedience and suppleness and softness for the dressage phase, that they had the endurance on the cross country and the roads and tracks days, but also they were brave, and then on the last day for the show jumping that you knew how to get a horse fit to have it to do all the endurance and then come out on the last day and still be able to show jump the horse. So it was a real military thing then, and then I learned a little bit at an event, and then I became obsessed. And I was very, very lucky. I was able, in most cases, to have my military career run alongside my aspiration, my eventing career. And I can remember once in particular, I rode a horse on the Queen's birthday parade. And I then rushed down to Windsor, and I had a car waiting outside. I rushed down to Windsor to ride my cross-country and steeplechase that afternoon at Windsor 3-day event. So it was quite hard trying to balance things, but it was an amazing thing to be able to do. And my badminton and Burleys, they were sort of the pinnacle. As I said, I learnt I wanted to be a riding instructor. Then I realised I wanted to be the riding master, and at the same time, riding around badminton and Burley was my next goal. And during that journey is really where I landed where I am now, because the badminton and the Burley trip introduced me to somebody called Yogi Breisner, and Yogi, a fantastic guy, and I looked at Yogi, the role he was doing, and I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to be team manager, straight team coach, and be able to be a part of that journey.
Do you still do this? Look at roles and think, I'd like to do that role.
The problem I have now, I don't know what's left, and it's a good question, because while I was in, like I say, I'd always had vision of where I'm going next or where I want to be, and now I am in this role. And as we spoke earlier this morning about the bigger role above this called the performance director's role, I've also held that role, which is basically oversees all the disciplines, the Olympic disciplines, dressage, show jumping and the eventing and para-dressage, but it's not a role I've really had any aspirations to do, because most of it is too removed from the field of play, and I like, as we are here, we're sat in the field of that Barracks competition. Absolutely. So we're sat here on the coalface, and we're close to the front line, and I really enjoy the excitement. I enjoy the coaching element, the tactical element, and things go wrong.
Just going on to being in charge of the musical ride, the spin-offs of the musical ride are obvious that it's good training and skills and everything for the soldiers, and then you get bookings all over the world. What other benefits are there to the musical ride? Because it's a phenomenon, isn't it?
So the musical ride for me, I mean, there's huge benefits for the army, keeping the army in the public eye. It's very good for
recruitment, you mean?
Yeah, for recruitment, for coming to county shows, doing displays, recruitment. But like I say, keeping the army, in the public eye, and because everybody owns a piece of the army. However you look at it, we're all taxpayers. But also, the household cavalry are custodians of a lot of history. But then at the same time, it's fantastic for the boys who ride on the actual musical ride, because they take their equitation to a level that is higher than normal.
So they absolutely love doing it.
Yeah, well, it's really hard work, because don't forget as well, when they go into that arena, they are on show, and you can perform in front of audiences up to 30,000, 40,000 people. So that pressure is really good for them to learn how to think clearly under pressure.
How do they get the horse to lie down?
So the lying down the horse is really quite simple. You just it's basically reward, and the horses are very much like people. You can teach just about any horse to lie down, but it's whether they will have confidence and they've got the right character to lie down under the pressure of the spotlights and the other horses galloping around. So this brings me on to another thing. I'm going to go off at a tangent here, but no, this is really key to sort of what we're talking about. You've got in any sport and in the musical ride, you have to have enough technical skills to be able to get the job done. And let's make it simple. If the fence is 3 feet high, you need to clear it by just half an inch. If the fence is 6 feet high, you still only need to clear it by half an inch. So you just need enough technical skills to get the job done. But what you must have is character to be able to perform on the field of play under pressure. And every now and again in life, and I'll use Charlotte Dujardin and Vallegro for example, you have a rider that has super technical skills, you had a horse that had super technical skills, and both of them have super character that they can deliver on the field of play at a chosen time and produce that sort of outcome. Those are what championship athletes, multi-championship
she's got that
athletes.
magic ingredient, be able to hold her nerve.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you were asking me, do you pick technical ability over character, I pick character every time. So the musical ride was a large part of that in developing people's character.
It's a test for them to go through.
And then the other thing, we're talking a little bit about the sort of my philosophy. So what I learned with the musical ride, and coming back to what did the musical ride do for me, in the previous years when I took over, they hadn't really had any foreign bookings for a long time. And what happened when I stepped into the role, I pretty quickly gave the boys ownership, and the stakeholders felt like they could determine the outcome of the ride. And I sat down with them and said, come on, I want some ideas. And the music, the movements, and there'd be 100 ideas, and 99 of those would be completely bonkers.
What was the bonkers one?
Oh, all sorts. Standing on them, going round. I mean, we've done all that years ago in the activity rides, but we've done. But there was some crazy stuff. Can we come down on a zip wire and land on the back of a horse type stuff? But there'd be one idea in 100 that was absolutely brilliant. And you put that into the ride. Of course, immediately you do that, you're giving the boys ownership, pride in what they do. They feel responsible for it, and then that took the level of the ride to 2 or 3 clicks higher than it was before. And probably one of the most iconic moments with the ride now is the gallop out with the Union flags, followed by the Union flag itself.
That's a terrific point in it.
Yeah.
Were you on the horse, the officer on the horse, who sort of beginning and end, who sort of leads them out?
No, so you had
That's
a ride.
Not you.
No, so the ride officer was responsible for the administration of the ride, the logistics, getting you there, getting you back, looking after the soldiers' welfare. The riding master, which was my position, you were responsible for the choreography of the musical ride, and the training of the musical ride and the delivery, basically.
So that took you all over the world.
Took all over the world. One of the most favourite places, I think, was to do that performance on the frozen lake at St. Moritz. So that was very, very special.
And did they go top speed across the lake?
Well, believe it or not, when they put like a peace basher on there, and they churn the top, say half an inch of ice up, and with studs in, the going is really, really good. Bear in mind that they do have races on there, they do play polo, and they do show jump on the ice.
So you retired as a major in 2009, having been the riding master for 7 years and awarded an MBE for equestrianism, and swapped the Cavalry blacks for pure dressage horses. That's quite a challenge.
Yeah, it was one of those things where we knew it was a gamble. I knew it was a gamble, and I did say to the Richard Davison, who was in the role before me, and to Will Connell, they approached me at Horse of the Year show, and I initially thought it was bonkers, but we sat round, and I said I'd agree to do it if I could shadow Richard for a few months in 2009. So I went to the Europeans with him in Windsor, and if the riders accepted me, then let's give it a go. But what we mustn't do is we've got to be really honest and look ourselves in the eye and say this is going to work or it's not going to work. And I was extremely lucky. I was part of that fairy tale journey when dressage hadn't really won any medals anywhere, and it, then you've got Carl and Charlotte at their best, Laura Beckelsheimer, and London was the first highlight, team and individual gold. It was only 3 years before that they got their first team medal, so it was absolutely bonkers period, and I was just really fortunate enough to be a small part of that journey.
So they deal in absolute accuracy, don't they? Precision.
Yeah, so the difference, with pure dressage, they have an influence over every footfall. And they understand where every foot is at the time and the balance, but it still doesn't get away from correct training and the scales of training.
And they've also got to show some flair.
The flair, as you call it, comes from, first of all, expression, but that actually, all of that comes from having the horse in the correct way of going. And the correct way of going for sort of years in high-level dressage, often the horses could be just a little bit tight in their frame. And for a horse to use itself, with the way a horse works with its biomechanics, they need to have a little bit more length at the base of the neck and the poll up and the face out, and then that allows them to use their hind leg better. So that's where, Carl and Charlotte had a massive influence, which probably the influence started with Wilfred Beckelsheimer, who Carl was based with him. But you're absolutely right. And then they started calling it in the pure dressage world, the judges seminars, the English way, which is a great pat on the back for all of those that have created this really soft approach. Flair that you spoke about, what happens then is the expression comes in the movements. So nothing should look forced. There should be empathy, it should look relaxed, but you want relaxed power. And it's nothing should be forced. So in horse trials dressage now, if you look at those top riders at badminton, they are producing an outline and a correct way of going as per pure dressage horses. And to give you an example of that, Euro dressage, they actually posted Laura Collett's test on Euro dressage, and they used it as an example from badminton how a test should be, how a horse should be presented in the test, which is absolutely huge for them to do that.
It must have been quite a shock to the system, though, entering the dressage world after army life. Did it take a bit of adjusting?
Surprisingly, I like an adventure. So, first of all, 30 years in the army, and I was really prepared myself for the shock of leaving and the sort of, in the army, you're very much in the system, and you have a lot of support around you. But I was ready to go into the blues really, and to really struggle. But actually. I didn't struggle at all, because I always look the first thing is always leave something while you're still wanted. And I left the army and I could have stayed for another 7 years, but I felt it was the right time to go. If you leave something while you're still wanted, that means that you're in control of stepping out, and in the same time you're always invited back because they wanted you to stay. So you leave on good terms. And you see it so often, people hanging in there to the absolute end.
You've always got to have a goal. You never say you've made it and you rest on your laurels.
No, and I use that in one of my talks. So I don't know if you've heard that, but yeah, it was by default. I was doing a presentation and we won the Europeans in Rotterdam, and I put a slide up on the wall and I said and on this slide it was the team on the podium, and I was stood next to him, and I put above it, "Made it." And as I was giving this particular presentation, I looked up at the screen and I thought, God, if you've made it, you're living the dream. The moment you live the dream, you're stagnating. The moment you think you've made it, you're not pushing forward. And
you can never relax with horses, can you?
No, and you can't relax with any sport, because you bear in mind we've been very successful, touching wood, and everything comes in a cycle. But we've had 5 fantastic years in eventing, but there's a target on our back, and everybody wants to beat the Brits. So, so that, it means that the next part of our journey is the hardest part, because it's the evolve part. And constantly, how can we go better? What can we do differently? How can we get? Because otherwise, we're going to get caught up, and that's the way sport works.
So we're here at Barbury. Has it been a high pressure day today? What have you achieved what you wanted today?
No, it's not been a high pressure day at all today, to be honest with you. I've had a few horses that are here of interest, that are current. But in general terms, the horses that are here are sort of the ones that are a click lower than championships this year, possibly Europeans next year, and
so it's work in progress.
Yeah, absolutely. So Barbury sits in the calendar that most of your badminton horses that have gone well, and horses that have gone to Kentucky, and now sort of coming back into work, but they'll be ready for Bersham or Hartbury, and then they'll be preparing their pathway to either the championships or to Burghley. So Barbury sits in the middle, and this is a really good pathway to Blenheim.
Is trail hunting a good training ground for event riders?
I think, two things that I think are missing is the Pony Club. Not everybody now goes through the Pony Club. Pony Club is
Did you go through the Pony Club?
No, I didn't. And I went through the military. I look at that sort of... when I was in the military, we studied Badowski, Alois Badowski, and all of those great classical riders from the Spanish riding school. But I would say that the Pony Club is,
vital.
Yeah, absolutely.
For the throughput.
And then with the hunting,
riders.
there's no two ways about it. I would encourage every event rider to go hunting. It teaches them how to look after a horse. It teaches them about the ground, about what horses are capable, and then obviously
to
for
cope
the horses,
with all weathers.
absolutely, and for all of those type of things, and that's why officers are encouraged to hunt, still are, because of the it teaches you about topography and all of those sort of key things.
Gets them off the surface.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other thing, of course, is great with hunting with the horses that aren't naturally forward or green with their cross country.
Freshens them up.
It absolutely freshens them up, and also gets it teaches them how to find a fifth leg, how to jump out the mud. And we do.
It's good for the horses and the riders.
Yeah, we're going to be very careful. I do a lot of stuff in my arena at home, but I also make sure I get in the car and go to a lot of cross-country schooling facilities that have a slope and have the undulations, and that's something you can't do in the arena.
Absolutely.
So and I'm not saying for every event horse, they're all different. But I think for the majority of event horses in the early part of their lives, it's really, really handy and really good for their careers to go hunting.
It's very useful to know, thank you.
And with the World Championships in Bretoni, you've got a busy few months coming up.
Yep, so lots going on. We've got squad training Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then off the back of that, it won't be too long now before we select our short list of athletes. And then before we know it, Burghley will be upon us, and then we'll be on our way out to Bretoni, which is the same week as Blenheim, so 2 weeks after Burghley.
So the grassroots of eventing, this is the pipeline for the eventers of the future. Have you got any thoughts for us on the lower ranks coming through towards you?
I think that first and foremost, you've got to keep the base of the pyramid as wide as you possibly can. So by keeping that base wide, people say that success starts from the top and works down. Well, I believe if you up the bar at the bottom, it pushes the top higher. So there's very much that thought process. If you look at the Nations Cup series, I like to think we use that as tactfully as we're able to give some of those sort of up-and-coming riders an opportunity. Because once an athlete is out, and notice I talk about the riders mostly as athletes, because in the modern sport now it's so professional that their nutrition, their fitness off the horse, the sports psychology, everything that it is a professional sport, and they are athletes first. But anyway, let me go back to, using the Nations Cup. A lot when they come out of juniors, young riders, then there's a bit of a void then before they might not be ready or have the horsepower to go on to a championship team. So the Nations Cups are really useful. There's a few other initiatives as well. There's the 4-Star Academy, which is, as it said, it's for 4-star riders that don't sit on the world-class programme or don't sit on the youth team programme. So it's trying to bridge that gap, so to speak. And there's also another incentive that's been going for many years called Bridging the Gap, which Lizzle Winter and Jill Watson run. So the broader the base, the more they push the top, and the better the top do, the more they pull the bottom up. So the whole thing's very much connected.
Are there any in the military coming forward like you did?
I gave a masterclass to the military last year, and then went and spoke at Sandhurst afterwards that evening. And there's a lot of really keen people in the military. A lot of them were show jumping actually, so I don't know whether there's the real opportunity, desire to event at the moment. Also, the military is becoming more and more stretched, so I think the opportunities are getting slightly less and less and getting harder to achieve.
Yes, I think it's a bit more difficult now, isn't it? So, to date, you've been involved in 23 championship medals. What would you describe as the proudest moment?
I think it's over 40 now. So,
oh, right.
Yeah,
we're a bit out of date.
Yeah, that's an old biog. yeah. So it's, including performance director's role and the performance manager's role, is over 40, and eventing and dressage is over 30, somewhere around there anyway. What's next? You don't stop thinking about the Olympics. The Olympics are our ultimate goal. All of our funding from the lottery comes on our medal targets for the Olympics, so it's really important. What's exciting about with the eventing job, we all know within the eventing role, the variables are huge. It is a sport of 1,000 variables, so you can have the best team going into the games, but all you need to do is, one to have a slip over on the flat, one to fail the trot up, and you're out. Like I say, you can be the best team going in, especially with the Olympic format, with only 3 in the team with no drop score. So, the risk factors, the variables and risk factors are much higher.
I know horse welfare is a very top priority of yours with your interest in the Brook animal welfare charity.
Yeah, the horses' welfare is obviously paramount, and there's always a lot of science, a lot of studies, and a lot of work going on behind the scenes to learn what can we do differently, what can we do. The advancement with horse welfare is huge. Different rules, use of the whip.
It's always under review, isn't it?
Yeah, always under review. So it's always changing and it's always improving.
Yeah.
Brilliant, Richard. Well, finally, we like to finish with some quick-fire questions. Claire?
I'll start with this one. Carrot or stick?
Oh, carrot, yeah.
First thing you do in a crisis?
Panic.
Gosh, not answers I expected.
The first thing you do in a crisis, you try to think clearly under pressure. Stop, think logical. Don't let the emotional side of your brain take over. Let the logical side of your brain take over.
Try and remember that one.
Yeah.
Favourite musical ride music? The most exciting music that you used?
Gosh. I really enjoyed when we did we had a live guitarist on the stage at a Horse of the Year show, and we did to Queen music. Yeah.
And finally, plaiting or clipping?
I actually enjoy plaiting. Yeah, I can still plait now really well.
There you are. You were destined for the dressage world, obviously.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, that was so kind. Thank you for a very special day.
Much intense listening going on there. Thank you, Dickie.
This is really exciting. We're with Pippa Funnell at Barbary. Pippa, how did it go, and how's the season going generally?
Excuse me, coughing away. I just had a super ride on Billy Walk On. Really good ride around the cross country here at Barbary. How's the season going? Like a lot of seasons, it's like being on a sea. You sit 1 minute you're up, next minute you're down. So it's a little bit of a roller coaster. I've had some really good runs this year. I had 2 good rides in Kentucky and America, and from that, one of the horses is on the long list for the World Championships. Probably not contesting the top lot, but he's sort of there. He's a good, consistent horse. And then a nice young horse called Mayback that was 6th in Kentucky. He went well. And then Billy Walk On. My string isn't so big now. I just have 5 event horses. And I'm show jumping quite a bit as well. And also been coaching. I've got an really nice American girl, Caroline Martin, who's based with me with 8 horses. She was here yesterday. So doing a lot of coaching, and I have another bunch of young riders. There's a charitable, the Wesco Equestrian Foundation, which is a sort of foundation to help young riders. So I'm the sort of trainer and mentor for them. So
is Harry much? Is he?
Yes. So he's got 3 horses here. Yeah.
He was saying the other day how he's improved since he's taken onto your wing.
And a really nice lad. And I think he comes from way up north, so he's going to come back. I think he's going to come and stay this week. So drive back to mine from here. So
he's got a busy week ahead.
Yeah. And so lots of coaching. I sort of seem to be going in that direction, but obviously it's finding time to coach and keep riding.
Well, 2nd and 3rd after the dressage, that was a good start.
Yeah, they were good. They did really nice tests. It was just a shame with the less experienced horse doing his first 4-star. He just got a bit of a surprise early on at the water, and sort of I felt that it was more appropriate to walk home and do a bit more homework, which you accept that with the sport. The most important thing is the horse's welfare and the safety and everything, and so I just walked home and go and do a little bit more homework. And
do you find that it's generally the water that you have to causes the...
No, not necessarily. I mean, you have some horses obviously are a lot braver into water than others. Sometimes he was a horse that, as a young horse, he was a little bit cautious with water, but he's been very good since. But this water comes early on in the course, and I think some of it is the fact that you come into the main arena with a lot of people, and there's atmosphere, and there's quite a lot for them to look at, and suddenly you have to turn, and there is this big drop into water, and I think it all just happens a bit quick for...
So do you think it could have been the atmosphere rather than the water?
I think he possibly was looking around a little bit, so when he actually focused on the water, it was all a bit of a last minute surprise. And that's some of the thing, when they're younger, you've got to, they learn to sort of start to look a bit earlier, and that's where he's not, he's been very, very consistent up to this level and been really good, but actually not been to so many events with
a lot going on.
Yes, and there was quite, yes, it's not badminton stuff going on, but it was busy enough around that area.
Brilliant, but that's really kind, and so you've had a great day, and perhaps a large gin and tonic when you get home.
I think when I get home, definitely. I'll wait until I get home.
Thank you for talking to us.
What an amazing day, learning what goes into preparing the athletes and horses for Team GB. The team behind them ensure that everything they need travels with them, from electrolytes to e-bikes.
Yes, it took a team of 40 to move 16 horses to the Tokyo Games, which also included para, show jumping and dressage, so we can certainly see where the money goes.
The shortlist for the World Championships in Pretoni in Italy isn't far away. Exciting times ahead.
No pressure then. Meanwhile, thank you all for listening. If you've enjoyed it, please share and tell your friends.
Thank you all, and please press that follow button so you won't miss our next episode when it could be you in the driving seat.